here's a situation that has the makings of a ripper yarn. 9 school kids stranded in a shack, and not a shack just anywhere, but a shack at the bottom of the world, Antarctica, in the middle of a blizzard, with a sinister force circling outside. This is the storyline of a production that is coming to Toowoomba's Armitage Theatre starting tomorrow night, simply called Shack. It's been described as a hypothermic flurry of comedy and thriller that explores the territory between young people's anxiety and their invincibility. It's a junior impact production presented by the Empire Theatres Foundation. So the cast and crew are made up of young people, incredibly talented young people, looking to perhaps forge a path in the world of live theatre. I went down to a rehearsal recently and caught up firstly with director Nicky Haeusler and assistant director Billie Riley to find out a little bit more about what promises to be an amazing time at the theatre.
So Junior Impact is our advanced performance making program here at Empire Theatre for young people aged 10 to 14. And each year we get to pick a published text which is written for that age group, which is not super common, unfortunately, in Australia. So we kind of give about 10 young people an opportunity to come into a professional theatre space to learn how to put on a production from start to end.
So are they generally people who have taken part in other drama workshops or other productions here before, or are they usually just fresh, like this is their first exposure to drama?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We usually have a really curious combination in how we build ensembles, because we have about usually around half who have done an impact before or who have done workshops with us. And then we have a couple of wild cards where it's young people who are like, I've never done this before, but I saw my older sister do it, or I saw something at QPAC and I thought to myself, I love it and I want to do it the rest of my life. Wow. So we're kind of like, come on, work with us for 5 months and then see how you like it. So yeah.
I mean, the wild cards must be really interesting, because no doubt you see some who come in, okay, they've never done it before, but they're just naturals. Do you see that they almost sort of light up when they get on stage for the first time?
Yeah, totally. One person that comes to mind is someone in the ensemble this year called Jay Cook, who this is his 3rd impact with us, but I remember meeting him in his audition, and it's just you go, oh yeah, like this is you're in the right spot, like this is where you need to be. And it's just that argument I hear all the time where people sometimes they're very quick to pitch sport against theatre as if we're like polar opposites trying to do different things. But in actual fact, it's just about giving young people a chance to express themselves in how that works for them. And for some people, that's kicking a footy around. But for these folks, it's pretending to be stuck in Antarctica without any adults. And they're like, yes, I feel like myself here.
It's one or the other, really.
Yeah, it's an interesting combo. Yeah.
Now, I'm sure that it was probably a joint effort, but when you came to choose this script, what play you were going to put on, what made you come at this one? Because this is, I have to tell you, I made some notes here, so it doesn't sound like your typical story for teenagers. The setting is not your typical setting for a play with teenagers. So what drew you to this one?
We actually had a really interesting chat with the writer, the playwright, George Kemp, and he said something that I think we both just really agreed with, and he was just like, we see a lot of plays for young people in this age group that are set in a high school and very like generic high school storylines. And so to be able to have a play like this where they're completely out of their comfort zone, you really get to see like their character arc and them change as people, like in a completely different setting that you'd see before. And I think that's what's the most exciting about it. Like for each of these kids as well, like obviously they've never been to Antarctica, but to be able to explore it in a safe way for one, and also just like have fun with it and see how they change as people as well by playing those characters, I think is like the most interesting part.
There's almost element of Lord of the Flies, sorry, cultural reference for those who are over the age of 45. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I want the record to show I was born in 1998 and I understood that reference. So.
Thank God, I feel so young now. That's great.
Yeah, I think it's like Lord of the Flies, but with like Gen Z young people and fart jokes. But I think in a way that what Lord of the Flies, like what we didn't have in the world when that was written was as much of an understanding of how much our climate is changing. And I think that, this story is about fart jokes and it is about young people taking control, but it also touches on how the world for these young folks are changing faster than it ever was for me when I was their age, and for yourself, David. And it's kind of an opportunity for them to make comment on that. And there's no better place to do that than Antarctica, where we're seeing those effects more than anywhere else. So
it all ties in beautifully. I must admit a certain sense of relief when I heard the fart joke thrown there, because it's still a young person's production after all.
Jay Cook. I'm 12 years old. This is my third time as a junior impactor, so it's been good every year, so I just decided to come back again, and luckily I got casted.
So you have to come along and you have to audition, or you're not guaranteed a role?
No, not at all. Some people didn't even get the role that they wanted this year. They got a different one.
But you ended up in the role you wanted?
Definitely, yes.
The experience pays off. What do you like about this story?
Yeah, well, all of them have been fairly crazy every single time, but in this one, it's just been put so far away from the normal world, and it really shows how kids can step up in the roles if there's no adults nearby. So in that perspective, I think that's why it's really cool.
Eliza, Kinnibugh, 13.
What was the allure of coming along and being in one of these productions?
Well, when you're in a really small town, there aren't too many big opportunities to do with acting. And so when I found out that Impact was a thing, and there was a junior Impact and a senior Impact and so many options, I jumped at the opportunity, and I love it.
What's it taught you? So this is you're getting towards the end of your second one. What have you learnt that you didn't already know?
The drive. So when you're saying a line, or even just speaking in general, a lot of people like to drop off at the end if they're feeling less confident or they're not too sure of what they're saying. But it's just about driving through the whole line and making sure you hit every note, I would say, but every sound in the line or what you're saying. So
does that translate to real life, do you think?
Yeah, it definitely does. I've noticed when I speak, I'm very confident with what I say, and I'm saying it more clearly, and I feel as though when I get to the end of a really long sentence, I know how to control where I breathe and how I say it, and
This play, as well as dealing with some really interesting environmental issues, it also sort of dabbles in the supernatural. What are your thoughts on that? Is it real? Is there not a Winnebago monster? What's the monster?
Wendigo. So
That's the one, yes. Is there a Wendigo?
Well,
I know there's Winnebagos, but is there a Wendigo?
At the very end, I've got a line along the lines of, it's actually way more scary than the Wendigo if you really think about it, because it's about the call of the wild and how nature can make you go wild, but if you listen to it carefully, it can blow away everything you're worried about. And the Wendigo, it's a representation of Antarctica, I guess, and how people come in and break things and do things to the climates and the environment. Then when they leave, it's completely ruined. And the Wendigo is a representation of it's cool telling us to leave because we're ruining Antarctica.
So it's like the gatekeeper of the environment.
Yeah, so the Wendigo, it's not really real. It's just it's a scary sound that they're hearing. And one of the characters, Mac, brings it up it's the Wendigo, we know it is. But yeah, it's just a representation of how we are breaking the earth and climate change and what we're doing to it.